If you enjoy this video, please consider giving a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you have any ideas for future videos, share them in the comments section below. This original bedtime story is made possible thanks to Slumberland patrons. If you would like to support this channel, you can find Patreon details in the description and on my channel homepage. So just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, I don't know whether you'll drift deeper to the sound of my voice or whether it'll be to the spaces between my words. And while you continue to comfortably drift asleep, I'm just going to tell this sleep story in the background. And this sleep story is about a woman called Maria. And Maria, while on holiday to an exotic location, decides to explore the nearby town. And as she heads into that nearby town, so she gets drawn in by the old buildings, noticing some of the strange architecture of these buildings. And she walks along a cobbled street and heads down an even narrower street. And she recognizes the word above a door as being a foreign word meaning library. And she opens that door. And as soon as she's walked through the door, she's instantly greeted by that calm, quiet, muffled sound of a densely packed library. And with a bit of a thud, she closes the door behind her. And the sound of her footsteps seem to almost just disappear almost as soon as she's taken the step. And there's a certain comfortable silence that she notices in here. And as she begins to look around this library, she realizes that many of these books look incredibly old. And she can smell that old book smell. She can't see any staff or any other people anywhere in here. She can just notice that there are some narrow, tall windows with the light from the sun shining through like shards of light, illuminating the dust in the air. As those shards of light carefully scan across rugs on the floor. And Maria begins to look at the different books, taking a few books off the shelves, carefully turning those pages, checking the dates of the books and the titles of the books before putting them back onto the shelves. Until after a little while of searching and looking at different books, she notices a really curious looking book. She takes it down off the shelf. She sits down on the floor with that book, resting the book on the floor in front of her. She opens that book. She can feel the thickness of the paper as she turns those pages. And she reads the date in this book as 1648. And she turns a few more pages and she reads the title. And she can understand different languages and can just about piece together what this book says, even though it's in a very old version of the language. And she realizes this book says that it can teach you the knowledge of connecting through time with yourself. And she finds this intriguing and just discovers herself continuing to read. And as she continues to read, so she starts reading about how this book says that the life force or energy can never be created or destroyed. That the universe began with a spark of eternal life. And that spark of eternal life, that initial energy, turned into matter. And each bit of matter contained an element of that eternal spark. And that eternal spark can never be destroyed. It'll either be matter or energy. And as she continued to read, she read it describing how you can connect with the eternal spark, and you can follow the eternal spark that's within you back through time. You can follow it back to being able to experience that eternal spark as it was previously, almost like accessing the memories contained within that consciousness. And she realizes that it's almost as if this is talking about past lives. And she continues to read on. And it says it's going to teach the reader how to do this, how to connect and access that spark, and then how to follow that back through your life, and then follow it back beyond your life to where that eternal spark existed before you. And after much reading, she came to the section that guided her through a process. And so she read that process. And it was a very simple process to follow. So she went over it a handful of times, reading the process, getting that process in her mind, before recalling the process to herself to guide herself back. And she remained sat on the floor in this library, that book resting in front of her, the silence of this library. As she started to guide herself through that process, she thought to herself, okay, just take a moment to close your eyes and take a few comfortable breaths, breathing in and breathing out, and breathing out any tension, and breathing in relaxation. And after a while of breathing in that way, you can begin to have a sense of walking through a meadow. And it's the most beautiful meadow with flowers swaying gently in the breeze, the colours, the sky overhead, and heading to that grand tree in the centre of the meadow. And on reaching that tree, you can touch that tree, almost like touching the tree of eternal life. And as you touch that tree, so a healing white light can begin to emanate from the tree, spreading through your hands, up to your shoulders, all the way up to the top of your head, and then back down through your body, spreading healing from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, softening and relaxing the muscles as it goes, relaxing you deeper and deeper into the experience. And as that healing light spreads through your body, relaxing you deeper and deeper into the experience, so you can have a sense of finding yourself as that bright healing light begins to fade, stood at the top of a grand staircase, and then just walking gently and very slowly down those steps, going 1/20th of the way deeper and deeper into the experience with each step that you take, until you're going to reach the bottom, where you can walk along an echoey corridor to a door, walking down those stairs, going 1/20th of the way deeper, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, deeper and deeper, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, being at the bottom of those stairs, walking along that corridor. The sound of each footstep reverberating and echoing as you walk towards that door, and passing through that door, finding yourself in a room of nothingness, a room where there's no up nor down, no left nor right, no backward nor forward, no time, just here now, approaching a connection with that deeper consciousness, that deeper inner wisdom, that deeper connection through time with that spark. And then walking through nothingness, unaware of whether you're moving at all, but going through the motions of walking. And then being surrounded by stars seeming to appear from all directions, as if you're floating in space. And with those stars appearing in all directions, noticing that one star in the sky, in that inky blackness, seems to stand out from the others, and almost instinctively feeling a compulsion to reach out for that star. And as you reach for that star and your fingertips seem to touch that light. You find that night sky turn bright white, and as that bright white quickly fades, you find yourself in a life you don't recognize, and you look around yourself. And as you look around, you discover the most incredible thing, that you seem to be seeing through the eyes, hearing through the ears, and feeling through the senses of somebody in the past, and you realize that you seem to be in the mind of a past life of yours. You look around and you feel almost like you're experiencing a lucid dream, where you're aware, but at the same time it's playing out around you. And you can see cobbled streets. You can hear a horse and cart go past. And as you're walking along the cobbled streets, you come out of a dark alleyway and into a more lit up area with people selling at little market stalls. And you realise it seems like a really old-fashioned high street. And as you look around, you have this feeling like it's almost Victorian. And the eyes you're seeing through, the person just seems to be walking down the street. They purchase some materials from a vendor, and as they purchase the materials, so they touch the cloth. They feel what that feels like under their fingertips, and you feel what that feels like. You notice they seem happy and smiling, and they're talking with an accent that you recognize. And you go along with this life for the ride, seeing where this takes you. And then this person heads along a bit further to another stall. They buy some food, and after buying that food, they seem to be working their way back the way they came. You realise they're heading home, and after heading back home, a little bit later on, they seem to settle down in a chair by a fire. You can hear that gently crackling fire in the background. So you follow the same technique, and you notice those stars appearing around you again. You reach out for that star, that light in the sky. And just as your fingers touch that light, so the light spreads to be bright all around you before disappearing, and you find yourself in another strange location. You realize that you're much younger and incredibly fit and active and running around. And you're running over hills. You can see the clouds passing overhead. And the hills are green and lush, and the air is cool. You realize you're in a very mountainous area with these hills and mountains around you. And at the bottom of the hills, you see what looks like a farm, and a horse, and a very basic cart. And you can see some adults working in the fields. And you don't know how far back in time you're seeing, or whether this is just in your mind or real past lives. And you don't know how you can know, but you know that you can learn from these experiences. And so when the opportunity arises, when, as this person, you sit down on the grass on one of those hillsides, you have a sense of going through the technique again, reaching for that light. And as the bright light surrounds you and then fades quickly again, you find yourself within giant stone walls. You can feel that the sun is incredibly warm. There's the most beautiful hanging gardens on the walls. There's the sound of running water around you. Water running down one of the walls as a water feature. And you find as this person, they're heading somewhere and just walking down the street. And it's a different kind of cobbled street. You have this idea that this seems to be a period in history dating back perhaps a few thousand years. And you find as this person that you turn into a large building. And in that large building, you can see scrolls wrapped up and placed stacked in diamond-shaped holes in the walls. Then you head over to one of those holes in the walls. You grab one of the scrolls and you're curious what this person's doing, and this person, who is you, unrolls that scroll. And you find yourself just instinctively understanding the writing on the scroll. And a part of you, aware of that scroll, and that it's an ancient language, is seeing this as potentially a sign that it could be a real past life. Because as you read that scroll, you can recognize the symbols as being a genuine ancient language, but you do seem to be able to understand it as this person, as if it's your own native language. And after they read that scroll for a bit, they roll it up, they head over and they sit in a corner. They then unroll it and continue reading. And while they're reading, you decide to see if you can go back even further. And you go through that technique. You see stars all around you. You reach for that light. And as you touch that light, so the light forms around you before fading away, and you find yourself with other workers building a pyramid. and you realize that you're in ancient Egypt. And you know that unlike other places, this is definitely somewhere familiar, and definitely somewhere you can be certain about the time, aware that there are some pyramids already built. There are some that you can't see, and there is this one that you're building. And you know that you're perhaps 4,000 years in the past. And so you experience helping and talking with the person alongside you while pulling those stones up the pyramid, as others are taking logs and moving them from the back to the front, from the back to the front. Others are pouring some water on the logs. And then, after a while, you and a friend, this person who you're talking with, take a break. And while you're taking a break, you head over to grab some lunch. And then you sit and talk with this person. And as usual, you're like an observer on the experience. Almost like that voice in the back of a mind that's observing what you're doing. Where you're doing something, and then in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, I wonder if I'm doing this right. I wonder what others think of what I'm doing. Later on, I've got to do this. And you're like that voice in the back of the minds of these people whose lives you're sharing. And after a while, you decide to see if you can go back any further. And so you follow that technique. You see that night sky. You reach for that light. That light envelops you and then fades away. And you find yourself in the most beautiful, ancient-looking city. And despite it being so ancient, you see what looks like incredible technology you've never seen before. And as you begin to walk around this area, experiencing this through the eyes of this person, seeing these vast, almost perfectly white buildings everywhere, everything so manicured and perfect. And seeing people seemingly so technologically advanced, you realize that you're in ancient Atlantis. And this person wanders around, going about their everyday life, not doing anything specific, just walking around and seeming to take in the environment, like they've just gone out for a walk for a day. And as you walk around with this person, you start to reflect on your experience to this point, reflecting on the different lives you've dropped in on. And you're aware that none of these people are around now. They all had their time. And you start to think about the value of these people to each other, about how, in any given moment, none of them knew the fate of their future or of the broader future. None of them knew that you were sharing the experience with them. And while this person sat down and just seemed to be enjoying sitting in a park with beautiful white flowers, blue streams and a lake, the most comfortable sunshine on the skin. Some people approached them, and the way they responded and interacted made you feel that perhaps this was their family. And so Maria observed with curiosity as this person interacted with their family, and they seemed to appreciate their family so much. When they were looking at different family members, they were attending fully with all of their attention to just that family member in that moment. And you had this sense, this feeling from within them that you were sharing with them, being part of them, that they really appreciated this moment, this life that they have, that whatever else has gone on for them, whatever else might happen in their future, they really appreciate the moment and those around them. And something that you notice while here is that this person places something in a box. The other family members place things in the box. And this person buries that box in the ground. And it's almost like they buried a time capsule. And then this person stands up and they look around. And as they look around, Maria recognizes a mountain on the horizon and realizes where this location is. That the mountain's a little different nowadays in modern time, but similar enough that she recognized it. And so Maria drifted back from the experience. And as she drifted back, she found herself back with those stars and found her way back through time. She was curious whether perhaps she could use this technique to go even further back in the future. And once she found her way back to being in that library, she opened her eyes. She placed that book back where she found it and left the library. And she knew where she wanted to go. And a few days later, she travelled to a location surrounded by islands. And she set off on a boat. Then after a while of travelling away from the shore on the boat, she looked back towards those islands and she recognised the mountains. And she travelled around on that boat a little bit, trying to get a sense of how those mountains looked in her mind back then. When she felt she was roughly at the location that she was when she travelled into those past lives, she lowered an anchor from the boat, suited up into diving gear, dropped off the back of the boat into the water, and allowed herself to descend. And as she slowly, carefully descended, breathing in such a calm and peaceful way, aware of the stillness and the slowing down of the environment around her while she descended through the clear water, she eventually reached the ocean bed. And as she reached the ocean bed, she allowed herself just to sit down on the sea floor. She looked around and she had this sense that she would be able to see the mountain if this was above the surface. She could see that the ocean bed wasn't smooth. There was lots of rocks and different shapes that looked all like it could have been natural, but also from her memory of where she was in that past life. She began to recognize that some of it looked like maybe fallen down buildings which had become overgrown over thousands of years and buried deep under the sea. And she got a shovel and she dug down gently into the ground. And she noticed after digging for a while that what she was digging through changed from a sand-like substance to a layer that was more like mud. And she continued digging. And then to her surprise, the spade seemed to knock something, and so she uncovered what she'd knocked and found, surprisingly, that that container was still there. So she dug that up, took that up to the surface with her, got back on board the boat. And on the boat, once she'd changed back into her normal clothes, she went into the cabin of the boat, placed that container on the table, and she looked at how she could get into it, and she found a way into the container, managed to open it. And as she opened it, it was almost like a puff of air that was trapped within the container, exhaled from the container. And she imagined that that bit of air and any smell that came with it was probably the only time someone in present day had smelt and experienced the air from Atlantis and in the container. She saw a lock of hair and she remembered one of the children placing that lock in there. She took that lock of hair out, gently handling that, feeling how soft that hair felt. She found what looked a bit like a rose petal and its waxy smoothness between her fingertips. And she took out all the different items one at a time. And the last item she took out was like a small scroll, and she carefully unrolled that and was surprised as she looked at it that she was able to read it, that something about travelling into the past lives had made it so that somehow, almost like a bleeding effect had happened, that she had gained some of the wisdom and knowledge and abilities of those past versions of herself that she had accessed. And she read that scroll and realized that it just contained long forgotten wisdom about leading life, about where to focus your attention, your love, your appreciation. What's important in life that you shouldn't let go of, that you should always keep in mind those important things in life. And she continued to read, and read that this person was concerned that, as a wider society, that the actions of a few were going to lead to the downfall for the many of the entire civilization. And Maria, looking back from the present, is aware that that is what happened, and was aware that some people back then were also aware that a certain fate was approaching. And she read that scroll with intrigue, and something about it resonated deeply with her, about making the most of every moment, really appreciating what you have and those in your life, and how you can enrich the lives of those around you, and how those around you enrich your life. And making the most of every single moment. And Maria felt a deep connection with this person who wrote that, and with the message they gave, and the time now that she finds herself in, and what she sees around her and experiences. And she travels back to the shore on her boat, spends a night in a hotel on the nearby island before heading home the next day. And that night, as Maria drifts and floats so peacefully, so comfortably asleep, she drifts asleep with thoughts of deep appreciation and love for those in her life, and what she has learned from her experience. As she falls so peacefully and comfortably asleep.